We're here. We're ready to do it. We're going to fly into the outer space known as continuing with Daniel chapter 3. That's not outer space. That's just not outer space, but it's a neat idea. We're going to do Daniel chapter 3, part 2. We're going to finish the story that we started. And the best way to review that is to look at, I don't know if you guys still have your same papers from when we did it the other day. I will show you where we are based on my papers. Good old Nebuchadnezzar builds this mega statue. It's super tall, and all things considered, it's really kind of skinny. I mean, it's not very wide, so I don't know how well it would stand. But anyways, when all the different kinds of people were gathered together, and then they heard all the different kinds of instruments, everybody was supposed to bow down and worship that super cool statue. You bow down and you worship that super cool statue, or your other option was getting killed. And so that is what's going on in the story. Now, one of the things that we talked about was that all these names of these people were repeated over and over again. All the instruments were repeated over and over again. And I think the instruments are even over here. Yeah. And so these things are repeated over and over again to really emphasize just how really foolish and silly this story is about trying to get this statue and trying to get all these people to bow down to it. It really shows, I think, Nebuchadnezzar's pride and how foolish all that pride is. Well, as it turns out, there's a person with a mustache. The Bible doesn't say whether or not he had a mustache. I do remember. There was a guy with a mustache and said, there are 3 people, O Nebuchadnezzar, they did not bow down. He says that these 3 people are Jews, and they have no regard for the king. They have no regard for the king's gods, and they have no regard for the king's idol. And how do you think Nebuchadnezzar felt? Well, how does this picture illustrate how he felt? He was one fired up king. He was so angry, he's shaking his fist, and he pulls them together, and he gives them that one more chance. And if you don't bow down, you're going to burn. And he says, and what God can take you out of my hand? How does he, here's the line in green. Who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? And he feels all big. And we left off with this super cool line from Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We'll read it again. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O King Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods, nor worship the golden image that you have set up. They might feel scared, they might feel angry, they might feel surprised, they might have ears and hands going up or down, but and they have all their legs. But whatever the condition is, however they're feeling, they know what their behavior is going to be. And I think that is something that's really powerful. This is a very emotional set of verses. They are talking about their feelings about God and their trust in God, and they know God, and it talks about their love for God and their devotion to God, and all those things are emotions and feelings and the way they feel about life. It doesn't talk about the feelings of were they scared or were they angry. Those feelings were a little less important to them. Their important feelings was, how do I feel about God? How do I relate to God? What is my relationship with God? And if that is all right, then who cares if I get burned up? I think that's a really cool lesson. Well, let's see how Nebuchadnezzar feels. He might be so impressed, like, oh, wow, what a noble answer. These guys, that with such a noble answer, how could I be angry at them? Well, let's see if he is able to be angry at them. Then Nebuchadnezzar, full of fury. Oh, all right, we already have our answer. He is full of fury, so I'll put that word on fire, right? Because it's fun to color things. He is full of fury. Nebuchadnezzar, full of fury, And the form of his visage had changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. All right, this is fun, old-fashioned language. What does that mean? The form of his visage had changed against them.
He made a different face at them.
He made a different face. The form or the shape of his visage or his face changed. Now, here's the question. Does that mean he grew another nose? Boop.
No.
No. What does it mean he made a different face? Did he go from boo to boo? Like, what's it mean?
Like, he saw them a different way.
Right.
He's reacting
Interesting.
differently.
He sees them different, and then he also looks different, right? I think that that's what he's doing. So, what do you think? We know that we're pretty sure he was angry earlier, and that he was giving them one more chance. What happened? Did they take that other chance?
No.
No. So I don't know exactly how to draw this, right? This is hard for me. But he was angry before, right? So what do you think he is now?
Maybe even angrier?
Yeah,
Or maybe-
I'm guessing so. Like, I don't know how you would draw that kind of angrier. But like something. Like he is just bonkers angry. And like maybe kind of like losing self-control. Does that make sense? Because what he does kind of betrays a loss in self-control. Sometimes I hear people say, they made me so angry that I did something bad. And my reaction to that is, you need to have better self-control. It's not their fault. Okay, well, let's keep reading. The form of his, okay, I should draw an arrow that he went this way. I think that's the idea. Is if you don't have self-control, not only will you do something dumb, you'll end up looking kind of dumb. All right, the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spoke and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. So the fireplace that they were going to get thrown in this heated fire was going to be times 7 in heat. Think about that. How hot does it feel like a campfire feels, right? Is a campfire hot enough?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever sat by a campfire and all of a sudden it feels like your knees are burning and you're just only close to it, you're not even in it? Those are hot fires, right? Now imagine it heated up 7 times hotter. That is a pretty good demonstration of his heart, don't you think? This anger is like a fire. This is like 7 times hotter, right? I think that that's kind of a funny illustration. His inner turmoil is demonstrated by his demand that the furnace is 7 times hotter. And he commanded certain mighty men that they were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. And these men were bound, I love my old translation here, they were bound in their hosen, their tunics, and their mantles. Okay, that's old-fashioned language for clothes. They were still, they were just bound up just like they were in their hosen, their tunics, their mantles, and their other garments. This is just a funny old translation. And they were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Wah! Now, you can't draw their arms out like this because they're tied up, right? But I usually draw arms out like that because it makes it look like people are falling. Ah! And they're getting cast in there.
One thing, he didn't have to bind them.
What?
Like, he didn't have to bind them.
He didn't have to bind them. That's a good point. That's a good point. So it's another demonstration of his losing self-control, isn't it? They were calm enough to do what they were commanded, it seems like they would have died, but he did it anyways. They were cast in with their clothes on. Therefore, because of the kings, now this is an important line, okay? Think about this. Therefore, because of the king's commandments, did Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego die? This is funny. Because the king's commandment was urgent and the furnace was exceeding hot, the flame of the fire killed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? No, the flame of the fire killed those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
It was so hot that like the guys that were nearby were killed.
Right. So he said, what God can take you out of my hand? Well, because he was so urgent and he made things this way that the flame of the fire killed the wrong men. He lost his self-control. He lost his self-control, and he was so angry at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that he was going to kill them so dead that he accidentally killed the wrong guys. Keep your self-control, people. We need to keep our self-control. When we lose our self-control, we lose our humanity. It's a big deal. So these poor guys, here you can draw the big strong man. You can draw its big beefy arms. And they're big beefy arms, and they're maybe they got beards because they're big strong men with beard arms, and I don't know. It looks like they're wearing puffy shirts. Those muscles look like puffy shirts, and then they've got legs and big beefy legs. I guess my guys are just looking like they're fat. All right, so here they are. They threw in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whose hands are tied up, right? Here's their hands tied up, and there's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they're flying in. But the fire was so hot that, and that's the fire sound, right? Gotta move the fire sound. If you don't do the fire sound, it's not a fun story. All right, so there's the fire sound, and there's the fire, and it's coming out. And what did the fire do? Did it kill Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego?
No, because God saved them.
God saved them. Yes, God saved them, but it killed these guys. And oh no, this is like, to me, this is the sad part of the story. Now you got to draw that they died. I feel so bad for these guys. They died, I think, because Nebuchadnezzar lost his self-control. Isn't that sad?
It wasn't their fault.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's another thing.
I feel so bad for those poor guys. It wasn't their fault they were super strong. You know, at least I'll give them cool looking clothes. I'll give them a blue shirt and green pants. I don't know if that's cool or not, but there he is. He's at least got cool clothes on. And then he dies. But these men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonied. This is an actual word. I thought it was a misspelling. It's an old-fashioned word for astonished. I don't know where I pulled this translation up, but it's kind of fun. The king was astonied and rose up in haste. Everything he does is quickly and loud, right? And he spoke with his counselors and said, "Didn't we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire?" And they answered unto the king, "Oh, true, king. Oh, yes, O king." And he answered and said, "Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire. They have no hurt." And the aspect of the 4th is like a son of the gods. So here we can draw most people draw the fiery furnace as like this big kind of doorway like this. And there's going to be all this fire going on inside, right? All this fire. You can draw the fire. And then you have to draw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Let's see. I can't remember the order that they were in. But there was the short one.
Oh, that's Meshach. I remember.
And there's a medium one. And I can't remember which ones had beards. We'll just have to deal with it. And then there's the tall one with the long nose. Right? There's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right?
Now draw an even taller one.
And then there's one. How is he described? He is a man, right? He sees 4 men or 4 people, so he's some kind of man. They're all loose and walking about. They're not hurt. But the 4th one, what does he look like? A son of the gods. Now here's an interesting word. In the Old Testament, the word God, have we talked about this? How the word God and gods was the same word? Have we talked about that in here? I don't think so. In English, when we say the word deer, how many are we talking about?
Also depends on whether you're starting a letter or you're talking about animals.
Okay, I'm talking about animals. I'm talking about animals. How many deer are meant in the word deer?
One.
One, but
Or
also more than one. If you see 3 deer, you say there are 3 deer. If you see 1 deer, you say there is 1 deer. And the word God in the Old Testament was that way. If there is one God, you would call him God. And if you were talking about false gods and many different idols, you would still use that same word God. Isn't that interesting? So when Nebuchadnezzar sees this guy, he sees, and your translations are going to, oh, my phone stopped. I'm sorry. Your translations are going to say different things here. I think this is interesting. My translation says son of the gods with an S, and some are going to say son of God with no S, and sometimes even capitalize it. And so people wonder, I wonder who he sees. He sees somebody that he thinks looks like a god or a son of God or a son of the gods, which means maybe he saw someone that looked like Jesus. Maybe it was an angel. We just don't know who or what he sees, but he sees somebody that is even better and more interesting than Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So while his own men died, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, number 1, they don't die, and number 2, they multiply. Where'd this guy come from? What would you say? Where do you think this guy came from?
God. Yeah, I think
God. He came from God.
Jesus.
You think he's Jesus? A lot of people do. A lot of people do. That's a good thought. All right. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and he spoke and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High God. What did he call God? Most High God. Not just any old God like an idol, but the Most High God. You servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth out of the midst of the fire. And the satraps, oh, here we go again. Satraps and the deputies and the governors and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men, that the fire had no power on their bodies, nor was the hair of their heads singed, neither was their hosen changed, nor had the smell of the fire passed on them. That, to me, makes the miracle so believable, right? How close do you have to get to a campfire before you stink like a campfire for the rest of your day? Right? Oh, there was a campfire on the other side of the campground. Well, why do you smell like you were rolling around in it? They were inside the fire, and they didn't smell like it.
Like smoke, you know.
Yeah, they didn't smell like smoke. And their hosen wasn't burned up. Good for them. That might have been uncomfortable. So this right here, this is a miracle. Right? This is just a miracle. This doesn't happen unless God does it. It's absolutely a miracle. So when they said, just one second, when they said maybe God will do it and maybe God won't do it, but we will worship God only, God sure did it, didn't he? Okay, what was your question?
Does it say if the angel came out?
It doesn't say, and I think that's really curious. Let's look at the text again, okay? All right, so Nebuchadnezzar looks in and he sees the 4 men, and that one of them looks like the son of the gods or the son of God. But then when he calls out, he calls for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to come. So he doesn't call for that 4th person. It could be because the 4th person has already left. It could be because he was afraid of the 4th person. But then it also just doesn't say what happens to that 4th person. Only Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego come out of the fire. That's all we know. The rest is mystery, and we have to think about it. All right, verse 28. Nebuchadnezzar spoke and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word, and have yielded their bodies that they might not serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, language, which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that anyone who speaks against this great God shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made into a dunghill." Because, look at this. I'm going to have to underline this. This is so cool. This is so cool. There is no other God that is able to deliver after this sort. Well, think about it. Is that true?
Yeah.
There is no other God that can deliver after this way. And then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Think about this. Who said, all right, usually when I highlight things in yellow, right, it's because it's a very good Bible thing to remember, something that could be in a prayer. In the book of Revelation, it was often some sort of praise, right? Who says the yellow line in this passage?
Nebuchadnezzar.
Wait. Are we
Crazy king.
allowed to let the foreign kings say the right things? Isn't that interesting? Isn't Nebuchadnezzar kind of the bad guy? Isn't that curious? Nebuchadnezzar is the one that conquered Judah and Jerusalem. Nebuchadnezzar's kind of a bad guy. But no, Nebuchadnezzar is starting to learn about Most High God. So let's draw that. Let's draw that idea. We have, it seems like we have, remember how Nebuchadnezzar changed his face, the form of his visage changed? We have several forms of his visage in this. At the beginning,
He's proud, basically.
he's proud because he makes his idol. Then
He's angry.
he's angry because they won't do what he wants. Third,
He was furious. Probably.
Oh man.
he is like goobery nuts, right? You can draw like spit coming out of his mouth and sweat and all sorts of stuff, right? This is his, oh, we can even number his beard. Face number 1, face number 2, face number 3.
Can you put proud eyebrows on the first one? Like,
Oh, eyebrow.
like arched eyebrows up at the top.
All right, now I'm going to draw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
How about you draw the first face number 1's nose turned up?
Ooh.
Oh, I could. I'm not going to. I don't have time yet. What did Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, what was their face like during number 1? It doesn't always say, but we have to guess. What do you think their face was like during face number, and I'll do it like this. I'll call this during phase number 1, this during phase number 2, and this during phase number 3. What did Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego feel during number 1 when he was so proud? What do you think?
I think they might have had their noses turned up, saying like, "We're not going to worship it."
That's a good idea. What else?
They could have maybe been nervous, maybe even
Angry.
or maybe even ashamed, maybe?
I think maybe they would be amused.
I'm just gonna draw it like that. Kind of like a flat mouth, because we're not gonna do it, but they might not want to. There is that, we will not do this bad thing, but we're gonna try to be polite about it, maybe, right? What about when he gets angry? How do they feel?
They didn't go crazy.
Maybe
It's the same thing.
maybe.
What about when he goes absolutely bonkers? Do you see the difference here? There's not much difference in these guys. No matter what the world is doing, whether it's proud, angry, or crazy go bonkers, what are we supposed to be?
Trusting in God.
Trusting in God, being good. Did they say mean things to Nebuchadnezzar?
No. No.
They did say so. They did say stuff that made him angry.
Right, but were they saying it in order to make him angry?
No. No.
No, they were just answering his questions. And I think that that's a big deal. He asked them a question that their answer is going to make him upset. The whole time, they have a love for God. They're giving him answers he doesn't like, but they're not saying, "Well, I think you're a dumb king, so to you." No, they're if you read through their answers, they're polite words, even if the message isn't what he wanted to hear. So when the world was raging, they tried to have love. They tried to have self-control. When the world was losing its mind, where had they set their heart? On things above? On God. And what's at the end of the story? How does Nebuchadnezzar feel at the end of the story? His last face.
Like, whoa, this is amazing!
Right.
Draw his mouth open. Maybe since you have so much room for the beard, maybe you could make it a little bit bigger, like
The mouth.
giant. I drew a giant, wide open mouth, and I drew his arms back, like he's just sort of falling.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want you guys to think about this. Was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were they preachers?
No.
Were they Bible school teachers?
No.
No, were they just kind of doing their normal thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when everything went crazy, did they stay their normal good selves?
Yeah.
And it doesn't always happen this way. It doesn't always happen this way. But how did it end?
Nice.
It ended very nice. It ended with the most powerful man in the world thinking that the true, honorable God is the great God. If we do things like the Sermon on the Mount and the meek shall inherit the earth, and if we try to live humbly and to love our enemies and to not call each other names and just do stuff like that Jesus talks about. Oh, just those simple things. No, those are really, really important things. If we stand our ground, even when the world's going crazy, look at what can happen. Have you guys heard that there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world out there today?
Yeah.
How are we going to fix it? If you think you can fix the world, then you're dealing with this pride. But this story teaches us that if we stay right with God and speak right, if we are careful, if we love God and love people, that the good things can happen. God does pay attention to us. God listens to us when we pray to him. God will help us and will help this world if people will let him. All right. Well, do you guys have any questions about this?
No.
All right. Well, I will let you go, and Lord willing, we will do chapter 4 next time. See you guys. This was a fun one to do. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.